On Fox Business, Melissa Francis, radio talk show host Meghan McCain, Democratic strategist Julie Roginski, and I'm so excited. Today's hashtag one lucky guy, Fox News chief political anchor and anchor of Special Report and anchor of what we saw last night, Bret Baier, is outnumbered. Good to have you.
Good to be back.
Yeah, big picture we're going to get to now.
I think we're going to talk about entertainment news, or?
No!
Oh, they gave me the wrong packet.
Taylor Swift's on tour again.
They gave me the wrong packet.
For a second there, my heart skipped a beat. I'm like, he knows, right? It's the debate.
Oh, the debate.
90 minutes flew by as Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump sparred in their first face-to-face showdown. The GOP nominee suggested he'll hit Hillary harder in their next debate after she tried to get under his skin about his business and his wealth. Here it is.
You know, Donald was very fortunate in his life, and that's all to his benefit. He started his business with $14 million borrowed from his father.
My father gave me a very small loan in 1975, and I built it into a company that's worth many, many billions of dollars with some of the greatest assets in the world. And Hillary, I just ask you this. You've been doing this for 30 years. Why are you just thinking about these solutions right now?
I've been a senator,
You
Donald,
haven't done it.
And
You haven't done it.
Well, Donald, I know you live in your own reality, but that is not the facts.
Typical politician, all talk, no action, sounds good, doesn't work, never going to happen, but we have no leadership. And honestly, that starts with Secretary Clinton.
I have a feeling that by the end of this evening, I'm going to be blamed for everything that's ever happened.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah, why not? You know, just join the debate by saying more crazy things.
I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes when she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted. As soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns.
Maybe he doesn't want the American people, all of you watching tonight, to know that he's paid nothing in federal taxes. So
that makes me smart.
I have met a lot of the people who were stiffed by you and your businesses, Donald. I've met dishwashers, painters, architects.
Maybe he didn't do a good job, and I was unsatisfied with his work, which our country should do too.
Wow. All right. So it plays differently inside the room than it does around the country. We'll know by the end of the week through polling what people thought outside. But what did it feel like inside the hall last night?
Well, you're exactly right, Harris. It plays dramatically different on television than inside the hall. I went back. One of the reasons I'm so tired is I went back to my hotel room and watched the debate again on TV, and it did play differently. And I think the first 20 to 25 minutes were some of Donald Trump's best arguments, when he came back to the change argument, and he came back to, you've been at this for 30 years, and he was talking about the economy, and he was really hitting it hard. And if somebody tuned into those first 25 minutes and then tuned out, they would say, wow, Donald Trump was on top of his game. He was really good. Now, the rest of the debate played differently. And I think that when you're in the room, what was interesting is you couldn't see close up the facial expressions.
Yeah. You think that made a difference?
Yeah, I think that the two-shot, which every network pretty much took, really showed the reaction to each moment. It's important to point out on polls, 8 of the last 10 times where since 1976, polls have moved towards the non-incumbent challenger, the non-incumbent party, by about an average of 2.6% after the first debate. Romney moved 4.4% after the first debate last time. If you look at the polls after the first debate, they are within 2 points of the final election numbers.
Right.
And so we'll see what happens to the polls here.
So some of that is what we talked about with the insiders on Sunday night, Meghan, and that is this idea of challenger winning the debate. And oftentimes it's that outsider who gets the label challenger. But just on balance last night, looking at the subjects who were on that stage, who gets that label?
Well, I agree with you that I thought he came out really strong in the beginning. And when he was hitting her on ISIS and he was talking about the economy, I thought all of that was really good. When she was talking about birtherism, I thought, and releasing his tax returns. I thought he completely lost the audience, and focus groups with Frank Luntz showed that happened too. Honestly, I threw a party last night. I was really looking forward to this.
Troy Aiken was at your party.
Clay Aiken.
Clay Aiken.
Yes, he's a friend of mine.
I mean, Clay plays football.
Which I want him to be one lucky guy sometime, but whatever. Anyway, I threw a big party. I cooked. This is one of the most disappointing debates, I think, of my adult life. I thought we accomplished nothing. If you like Hillary Clinton, you'll continue liking Hillary Clinton. If you like Donald Trump, you'll continue liking him.
Totally.
And quite frankly, Lester Holt really missed some opportunities. Why wasn't Benghazi brought up? Why wasn't her email scandal brought up? And by the way, if you're a foreign policy hawk like I am, nothing was brought up. You're just talking about your history of what you've thought about the Iraq War, not what you're going to plan going forward. I was entirely disappointed by the whole thing.
So, Julie, in that clip that we showed, the big moments last night, the tax returns was one that they spent some time on. Fox News polling recently showed that it got a paltry 6% in things that likely voters were interested in, as did birtherism. So I just want to get from you. Well, yes, that's true. I mean, the things that we likely cover, likely voters are saying they likely like something else. How do you think your candidate did last night?
Well, you know, Melissa, I was on Melissa's show yesterday, and I said in advance of this debate, I was actually very pessimistic about Hillary Clinton's chances because I said she has a very high threshold she has to meet. She has to knock this out of the ballpark, virtually on every level. All Trump had to do was not take the bait and keep it together for 90 minutes. And he would have exceeded the very low threshold that I think the media has established.
Do you think he did that?
I do not think he did that. I cannot believe that he allowed himself to be baited by her into what he was baited into, whether it was the Rosie O'Donnell comments, which he continued this morning, talking about this former Miss Universe and how she got too fat for him, whether it was the emails, sorry, not the emails, the taxes, whether it was the birtherism. I couldn't believe that he took the bait. He didn't need to do that 90 minutes of keeping it together to pass the very low threshold of commander-in-chief, and he continued to allow himself to be baited. And if I'm the American public, I'm watching this and I'm thinking, if she could bait him by niggling him on his business, what else can he be baited
Can I just say that this couch is a perfect example of exactly what I think happened last night? Nobody won or lost a single vote. Everyone hates the other side even more this morning than they did last night when they went to bed. Not one undecided person decided to vote for those people. The only person who gained ground was Gary Johnson by virtue of not being there.
I would have liked
Everyone's
to have
more
learned
entrenched.
And I saw Jill Stein
I would
tweeting
too.
last night, too, thinking that she was also picking up some points.
They were
as well
exactly
through
who
it.
we know they are. They
But it
came
didn't
out and they
have
were
to be
themselves.
like this.
No,
We
it
could've-
didn't.
I wanted to learn a lot more. I want both of them pressed on what they're going to do about ISIS, and it didn't happen last night.
She was well prepared. Let's just say that.
Yeah, well, and
Definitively.
she challenged him on that. She said, are you picking on me because, and I'm paraphrasing her, because I prepared for this debate. But you know, Brett, one last question before we move on and talk deeper about the economic part of the discussion last night. Do you think that Mr. Trump gets any credit for this being his first time and then looking at it through that prism or not?
I do think he gets credit for just being on the stage. It legitimized him for being at this moment. However, I think you're right. He was drawn into questions that he didn't have to be drawn into. That is Trump in that he is authentic. And one of his Achilles heels is that he answers every question.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't do the traditional politician where you answer a little bit and then you pivot.
Yeah.
Or how about Hillary when on the email question where she says, where Secretary Clinton said, you know what, it was a mistake, period. And there was no follow-up, and it just moved on.
Yeah, stop talking when you're ahead, you want to tell them. All right, more sparks really started flying last night when Donald Trump attacked Hillary Clinton over two controversial trade deals. That came after the Democratic nominee slammed Trump over his plan for the economy. Watch this.
In fact, it would be the most extreme version, the biggest tax cuts for the top percent of the people in this country than we've ever had. I call it trumped up trickle down, because that's exactly what it would be.
You've been doing this for 30 years. Why are you just thinking about these solutions right now? For 30 years you've been doing it, and now you're just starting to think of solutions.
Well, not quite that long. I think my husband did a pretty good job in the 1990s. I think a lot about what worked and how we can make it work again.
Well, he approved
3 million
NAFTA.
new jobs,
He approved
a balanced
NAFTA,
budget,
which is the single worst trade deal ever approved in this country. Your husband signed NAFTA, which was one of the worst things that ever happened to the manufacturing industry.
That is your opinion.
You go to NAFTA is the worst. worst trade deal maybe ever signed anywhere, but certainly ever signed in this country. And now you want to approve Trans-Pacific Partnership. You were totally in favor of it. Then you heard what I was saying, how bad it is, and you said, I can't win that debate. But you know that if you did win, you would approve that, and that will be almost as bad as NAFTA. Nothing will ever top NAFTA.
That is just not accurate. I was against it once it was finally negotiated and the terms were laid out. I wrote about that in...
You called it the gold standard.
I was against it after it was negotiated.
I know, I was against it after I was for it, and then I was against it. I mean, Brett, to me, that was by far his strongest exchange. You could tell he was very authentic, very much believed in it, understood all the issues. That was his strength. What did you think of her responses there?
Well, you're right, and that was in that first 25 minutes that was talked about. And I think that her response, she goes on that next sentence to say, no, I didn't say it was the gold standard. I said I hoped it was the gold standard. But actually, if you look at the quote, she does say TPP sets the gold standard. And, you know, that was a fact check that was not checked, you know, real time. I think that issue, the economy, but more importantly, the change. This is a change, or supposed to be, a change election. And if he kept on hammering the 30 years, the change, and he said it 5 times in the first 25 minutes. If he continued that through 90 minutes, I think it would have been a different story.
Megan, I didn't love that part where she wiggles and she says, I think my husband did really well in the 90s. I mean, I don't know, that wiggle is a big tell on her.
It got a lot of attention on Twitter, too, and those are the nuances in any debate that people pay attention to, him drinking water and sniffing, her wiggling.
And also her taking credit for her husband's account. My husband.
She wants to play it both ways. She wants to take credit for her husband when it's good, and she wants to say he's a different person when things are bad. I mean, I'm coming at this from the millennial perspective. She is bleeding millennial votes right now. Majority of them, half of them, are going to Gary Johnson right now. Talking about trickle-down economics, that happened in the 80s. You need to explain what you mean when you're attacking him. And his messaging, if you agree with it or not, it's very concise and it's very easy to understand. And that's, I think, when he's talking to the swing state voters, the people in the Rust Belt, who just want their jobs to come back to the United States and maybe don't know what it means, but know that under Hillary Clinton's plan, it's going to be more of the same like the Obama administration.
Julie, how does she respond to, because that was a good attack on his part, that you've been doing this for 30 years, and that is the whole complaint against the whole democratic system of, you know, why the country isn't prospering right now. You've been in control, the economy's not doing well, you've been at this for a long time. What did you think of her response to that?
So I was watching that first half hour, that first 20 minutes, and I was thinking to myself, this is it. He's knocking this out of the ballpark. He was excellent on this issue, and she was not. Look, there's no good answer for her in TPP. The reality is she was for it before she was against it, and her reasons for being against it are not reasons I think any of us buy. I don't think the conviction is there, let's put it that way. But as I said, had he kept it up for 90 minutes, he would have put this away. I really believe that he would have put this away. Instead, he allowed himself to be baited. And again, if he had stuck to these core issues that people care about, Megan is absolutely right. If you're a millennial, you don't know what trickle-down economics are. If you're a millennial, you don't understand. Well, I shouldn't say they don't understand, but it's history for you.
Right.
You haven't lived it. But instead of focusing on that for the next 60 minutes, he proceeded to just allow himself to be baited. And again, Brett, you're also right. If people had just watched the first half hour of this and then turned this off, they would have thought Donald Trump did a fantastic job. His numbers probably would be up today. But in reality, if you stayed for the full 90 minutes, he really did himself a lot of... Yeah, he really did himself a lot of harm.
Here's the real question. If those numbers don't move Hillary Clinton's way, or significantly Hillary Clinton's way, she has a real problem on her hands.
Absolutely.
Because that means that they have underestimated the feeling in this country that the establishment is not getting it done.
You know,
it also potentially means that she could really suffer if he decides to raise his game and do some things that he didn't get practiced at, obviously, because it was his first time, I would argue, but maybe because they just didn't practice it, and that is doing those pivots and getting back on point and hitting the emails and so on and so forth.
We got to squeeze in a break. Hold that thought, Julie. A lot more to talk about. The candidates also clashing big time over ISIS and how to defeat the terrorists. Who got the better of that exchange? And how will it resonate with voters? Plus, you know it, we've got the best singers from each candidate. And after the show, you can join our live chat by clicking the Overtime tab at foxnews.com/outnumbered or go to facebook.com/outnumberedfnc. And of course, you can tweet all of us. We'll be looking at it during the break. We'll see you there.
Yeah.
During last night's debate, the candidates facing off over their strategies to defeat ISIS. And who's to blame for the terror group's rise? Donald Trump claimed Hillary Clinton was sharing too much about her plans for the enemy to see. Watch.
Just go to her website. She tells you how to fight ISIS on her website. I don't think General Douglas MacArthur would like that too much.
The next segment, we're continuing the subject
at least I have a plan to fight ISIS.
No, you're telling the enemy everything you want to do.
No, we're not.
See, you're telling the enemy everything you want to do. No wonder you've been fighting. No wonder you've been fighting ISIS your entire adult life.
Folks, go to the fact checkers. Get to work.
President Obama and Secretary Clinton created a vacuum the way they got out of Iraq. Because they got out, they shouldn't have been in, but once they got in, the way they got out was a disaster. And ISIS was formed.
Donald supported the invasion of Iraq.
Wrong.
That is absolutely
wrong.
Is George W. Bush made the agreement about when American troops would leave Iraq, not Barack Obama.
So, Brett, I was infuriated when I was watching this. If I were Lester Holt, I would have said there are reports that ISIS is using chemical weapons against our soldiers in Iraq right now. What are you two going to do about it? How difficult is that? What did you think of the exchange?
Right. Well, first of all, that last sentence was factually wrong.
Yes.
In that George W. Bush did set the status of forces agreement. It did have an end date. However, the expectation was it was going to be renegotiated. The Iraqis said, we're not going to do it. But even the former defense secretary, Bob Gates, said if the U.S. wanted to do it, they would have been able to renegotiate that. But the Obama administration did not want to renegotiate that status of forces agreement and thereby pulled all troops out. So that's nuanced status of forces agreement. You know, it's a little in the weeds, but what she said was not factually accurate. So on the ISIS thing, you're right. It's urgent. It's now. What is the plan? And we didn't get that. Instead, you're also right in that Hillary Clinton managed to bait Donald Trump into defending and talking again about Howard Stern and the Iraq and starting the whether he was for it or against it. If it's about Donald Trump, it is not a winner of a debate moment for him.
That's interesting. I mean, you know, Brett, this is kind of where I see that lack of experience on the stage coming in, because it takes a lot to elevate that moment. Because you don't rise to every occasion, but that was one you needed to elevate that moment and get to chem weapons in Aleppo and the red line and show what he's talked about on the stump.
Or how about Syria? Syria, what's happening in Syria and how she was affected. She affected U.S. policy in regards to Syria and what it is now. I mean, it's essentially fallen apart.
So he needed to elevate that moment, and Lester Holt didn't help him do that.
A lot of rehashing of the past instead of the plans for going forward in the future.
And also a lot of, I mean, go to my website. I thought I couldn't, I mean, it was like a drinking game. Go to my website, read my book again and again. And I'm like, but you didn't write either of those things. So telling people to go and read something that somebody else wrote as your plan is disingenuous. It was very Tracy Flick. If you've ever watched the movie Election, standing up there together, she's like, I wrote it, you know, her whole thing, and maybe it's all on there. Who can get through all of it?
Well, so
not the viewer, not the average person at home. They don't have time for that.
And it wasn't on the front page, which if you're going to send somebody to your website, then you need somebody sitting there to call it up on that front page.
But here's the issue for him. I mean, you can't suddenly start talking about the Iraq war, which he claims he was against, and fact checks himself by saying, call Sean Hannity, who's going to vouch for me. I mean, that's not what people need to hear. Furthermore, he's not General MacArthur. If this were Dwight David Eisenhower, he was standing up on that stage and saying, take my word for it. I have a secret plan. I know how to do this. People might say, okay, you've done this before. I understand. But it's Donald Trump, who's got absolutely no experience in government, in the military, or in foreign policy. To say, take my word for it, when I'm basically a reality show host who runs a real estate business, is not something that people are going to feel comfortable with. He needs to provide specifics. It can't be a secret plan. He's not Eisenhower.
If they don't get to specifics in the next debate, my head's going to explode all over my television.
People are already voting in several states.
All right, critics slamming debate moderator Lester Holt for failing to ask Hillary Clinton about Benghazi or the Clinton Foundation. Was this more mainstream media bias, or should Trump have brought up those issues himself?
Debate moderator Lester Holt is coming under fire today for failing to ask Hillary Clinton some tough questions last night. He grilled Donald Trump on tax returns, the Iraq War, the birther scandal, his bankruptcies, and stop and frisk crime policies. But no questions, no follow-ups for the Democratic nominee on Benghazi, the Clinton Foundation's pay-to-play allegations, or her quote-unquote deplorables comment. Some analysts say Trump may have missed some opportunities to bring them up himself, but he did hit her on that email scandal. Watch it.
I made a mistake using a private email.
That's for sure.
And if I had to do it over again, I would obviously do it differently. But I'm not going to make any excuses. It was a mistake, and I take responsibility for that.
That was more than a mistake. That was done purposely. Okay, that was not a mistake. That was done purposely. When you have your staff taking the Fifth Amendment, taking the Fifth, so they're not prosecuted. When you have the man that set up the illegal server taking the Fifth, I think it's disgraceful. And believe me, this country thinks it's disgraceful. It really thinks it's disgraceful also.
Afterward, Trump tweeted, quote, nothing on emails, nothing on the corrupt Clinton Foundation, nothing on Benghazi. But to be fair, there were also questions about Trump's foundation or his university. Or no questions on those, rather. Brett, you are the expert moderator on the couch among us here, and you've done this before. How did Lester Holt do, and where did he fall short?
Well, let me preface this by saying I like Lester Holt. I respect him a lot. I don't get in the business usually of criticizing moderators because it really is a very tough job trying to keep the thing on the tracks. I think there were a couple of opportunities where he should have asked a tougher question to Hillary Clinton, like he asked to Donald Trump. And, for example, the email follow-up should have been there. If you're going to ask a question about women and looks or how Hillary Clinton looks, then a deplorables question probably fits in. If you're going to ask a question, about the birther issue, which is totally legitimate, the Clinton Foundation probably should have been asked about. So I guess it's the balance that I felt like could have been improved on, but I get how tough that job
But
is.
there's another thing, too, that's even more nuanced. It's this idea, and I learned this when you come over to cable news hosting, which I like to call Fight Club. When you have people in front of you who are debating, who are on opposite sides, I mean, you are getting one to come out from behind the couch who's trying to hide. You're checking the other one. It's a very specific skill to keep the debate going. You don't want to inject yourself, but at the same time, you've got to keep these two people in control. That's not something Lester does every day. He doesn't do that spirited debate that you're challenging like that. I mean, we do that around here like every day.
So
he does. It's a different skill. It's a different
Lester
skill.
Spent a lot of time in cable TV and the Fight Club that you're talking about, but this was decidedly different too because we had the whole fact-checking conversation going into this that was a little bit different than we did with the primary debates on either side, Democrat or Republican. So then the question becomes, how much of that is his job? Is that in his head as well? And can't we just have a bullpen do that someplace and just let the moderator keep it going as Melissa's talking?
But it's interesting to me because prior to this debate, a lot of people said it's not his job to intervene. It's not his job to fact check. And
is it?
And now I'm hearing that a lot of people are complaining that he wasn't asking her about deplorables, about Benghazi, about other issues. But is that his job? Look, the hits that she took at Trump, she initiated for the most part. I mean, the whole birther issue, I believe that she brought it up. He may have had a follow-up question. I'm not sure about that. But all these issues, but all these issues that he did not really bring up, she took the shot at Trump, and that just shows that she was prepared. She knew how to wrangle with him in ways that Trump wasn't prepared to do. Is it Lester Holt's job to support Donald Trump and raise him up because Trump is not doing the job he should do?
No, that's clear. That there was a lot of low-hanging fruit that Donald Trump could have grabbed. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
No question.
And
it's never good when you're trending on Twitter. Where's Lester? I mean, there was a whole period of time where I was like, where's Lester Holt? Is he still moderating this? And I do think it's a fine balance. I just said at the end of it, he got Matt Lauer. Clearly, he was, the impact of how, all the criticism Matt Lauer got for not hitting Trump hard enough. He was like, I'm going to go after him. him. I completely agree with you. If you're going to bring up his comments about Hillary Clinton and her face and looking presidential, then you got to go toe for toe and ask her about her deplorable comments, or maybe her husband's relationship with women and her culpability and, you know, shaming them over the years. And none of it, it seemed, this is what I want. I want someone to moderate a debate who doesn't make it about them. I'm looking at you, Anderson Cooper. And I want you just to intervene and follow up. And again, I know this is very hard, but there are people that do, I mean, quite frankly, you do it well, Brett. I mean, there are people out there that do this well. It just apparently isn't going to be.
He's the expert on the couch here. So when you talk about stop and frisk, this is an example that I would give. Was that an opening then for that moderator, who is African American, to say, you know, Mrs. Clinton, you also have said things like they need to come to heel, and the conversation that she's had about African Americans and crime in this country. But there was an opportunity there, or no?
He did go after her on super predators. He took some of that, Donald Trump did, but there were many more opportunities. I know. So usually, if you look back at the debates that Jim Lehrer did, you don't think, oh, Jim Lehrer was all over the place. The debate commission would like a moderator to be invisible for the most part, and that's just the format that they prefer. They would like the candidates to interchange with each other. If he's going to fact check, though, you have to fact check on both sides.
Both sides, right? Yeah. All right. Thank you from the expert. With many cities being gripped by protests in the past several months, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton tackled the hot-button issue of race, which is what I was just talking about, and how to battle crime affecting our inner cities. Did either candidate have the edge? We debate it. Stay close.
The debate happened on the same day that the FBI announced violent crime rising nationwide last year, with murders up nearly 11%. Donald Trump defending the controversial police tactic stop and frisk as the two candidates clashed over race and how to battle the crime gripping many inner city neighborhoods. Watch this.
Secretary Clinton doesn't want to use a couple of words, and that's law and order. And we need law and order. If we don't have it, we're not going to have a country. Our inner cities, African Americans, Hispanics, are living in hell because it's so dangerous. You walk down the street, you get shot.
It's really unfortunate that he paints such a dire, negative picture of black communities in our country. Stop and frisk was found to be unconstitutional, and in part because it was ineffective. It did not do what it needed to do. I think implicit bias is a problem for everyone, not just police.
That you were the one that brought up the word super predator about young black youth. And that's a term that I think was it's been horribly met, as you know.
Interesting, because we looked at each other during implicit bias. In case you don't know that out here, this is a new dog whistle. Implicit bias is the racism you acquired while you were asleep, when you didn't know you had it. No matter what color you are, no matter who you are biased and racist. You have it. You may not realize it. It's a new buzz phrase.
It's like it triggers the safe zone necessity along with white privilege and so on and so forth. You know, the challenge, I think, last night was for that conversation again to be elevated, to go beyond the barbs back and forth about, I mean, I really was waiting for where's the plan in all of this. And so the question is, which candidate did well with that? Because I think the nation is waiting for a plan. They're waiting for leadership. The president has not gone into, unless he did it today, Charlotte. There's been a call for that top level of leadership, and so there was an opportunity there for these two people on that stage. How did they do?
Yeah, I mean, violent crime has spiked in 2015 by 11%. I mean, it's one of the things we've been talking about. This country is on fire when it comes to race relations. You just have to watch what's happening in North Carolina last week, and every time there's an incident with police and a black man gets shot, I talk about it on the radio for 3 hours every day. This country is tearing itself apart when it comes to race relations. Neither of them said anything. Our president's not saying anything. And actually, the one thing Donald Trump really needs to be careful with, you know, when black people walk down the street, they're all getting shot. This dystopian idea of what America is. Yes, crime is important, and it's intense and it's scary right now. But the idea that just if you're a minority walking down the street, you're going to get shot and you're living in, quote, hell. Like, I have some friends that take umbrage with that.
Yeah, and, you know, to your point, what I thought was interesting about that, and I've prepped so many people for debates, so this was the part of the debate where everybody was talking to their base.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
This was a get out the vote effort segment of this debate, because what ended up happening was she was talking to her base, where she mentioned the African-American churches and other community centers that are so instrumental in African-American inner city life. He was trying to scare the bejesus out of his white suburban voters about how this dystopian vision that Megyn talked about was going to come over to the suburbs eventually, because it wasn't going to be contained just in the inner cities.
That's not what he was saying.
That's exactly what the dog. That's exactly what the dog whistle was to his base. I'm talking about this was the base portion.
That's not how
of this. This was the base portion of this debate, and that's what I'm talking about. Nobody's minds are going to be changed about this. Either you live in fear that you go to Harlem and you're going to get killed, have a bullet stuck in your head, or you think that.
Well, somebody's mind might have been changed if we had seen an actual plan from one of these people.
Well,
on
she
the
talks
stage.
about criminal justice reform all the time.
And he did talk about the unions that back him and
Brett,
so on and
though,
so forth.
I mean, this is one of those topics, though, and you could see it from the couch, where everyone could have won. And I think that's kind of what Julie started to say, because he can talk about law and order, which resonates really well with his people, and she can talk about all of the challenges that are going on in cities with police and the perception and Black Lives Matter and all those things that they don't agree on. They could have each won the issue. Did that happen?
I don't think so. I agree that it was base stirring, and this is a tough issue when it comes to stirring the base. Obviously, it's really splitting up different communities, and there was an opportunity to take it to a different level, to say, you know, let's not do this for politics. The African American, the Smithsonian Museum just opened this week. Let's celebrate and try to figure out how we can make this thing
Had you
better.
been there, you would have said that.
But neither kind of said that.
Doesn't help them, though. Politically, it doesn't help them. That's a great answer. If you're the president of the United States, you want to bring people together. This is all about the get out the vote portion of what we're about to say.
Yeah, but it's an opportunity to say that it's not about us, the politicians. It really is about America.
Their independents would move to that answer.
Interesting. All right, so you knew it would go there eventually, right? If you were watching last night, the big gender issue, how it played out, who won that moment, and what was Donald Trump going to say that he didn't? And was that a smart move?
Last night's debate also turning to the issue of gender. It all started when Donald Trump was asked to clarify a comment he made in the past that Hillary Clinton didn't have, quote, a presidential look. Watch.
She doesn't have the look. She doesn't have the stamina. I said she doesn't have the stamina. And I don't believe she does have the stamina. You have so many different things you have to be able to do, and I don't believe that Hillary has the stamina.
He tried to switch from looks to stamina, but this is a man who has called women pigs, slobs, and dogs, and someone who has said pregnancy is an inconvenience to employers, who has said women don't deserve equal pay unless they do as good a job as men.
I was going to say something extremely rough to Hillary, to her family, and I said to myself, I can't do it. I just can't do it. It's inappropriate. It's not nice.
So, Brett, I want to know, how did that play in the room?
Well, by that point, you know, this is towards the end, and the audience was then just reacting. You know, they were clapping, they were laughing, they were reacting to the point. You know, Lester Holt had to turn around a couple times. Whenever Donald Trump's in this place, it's probably not a good place, and he is. It's just not one that is going to win over. His people, as you said at the beginning, are going to be behind him. He's trying to get the folks who are either on the edge or who could be persuaded. And he could have easily said, listen, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about things that change this country. This is not about me. It's about the country or something. You know, the pivot is his Achilles heel is to answer everything, and it is authentic.
Right.
But it gets him in trouble.
Yeah. Did we hear "Make America Great Again" very much last night?
A couple times, although I would want to, one more thing. By not saying what he was going to say, he said it. You know, I mean, everybody went, oh, he was going to talk about
the whole thing was so uncomfortable. I mean, watching that entire segment again. I mean, at this point during the night, and you're right, because first of all, I don't know, so many people had gone away by that point. It was still zillions and zillions of people watching, but it was so uncomfortable. I mean, all of the back and forth.
It was also very late in the journey.
Yeah.
As Brett
it was
pointed
towards
out.
the end.
right?
Yeah.
But
So the reason I ask about Make America Great Again, and you're talking about a pivot, he had somewhere to go there. And again, this comes from the practicing of that. I would think, just in my years of journalism, I mean, I think that gets practiced when you get into this, then bring back not just your ideas, but that slogan that also puts it back on the people. I don't know.
You know, what was so fascinating to me about this is yesterday he essentially defended calling Rosie O'Donnell a pig because she deserved it. This morning he said about the former Miss Universe that he criticized for gaining weight, who subsequently said that she became bulimic.
We have that sound.
As that result, we'll play that sound in a second. But then his surrogate, Rudy Giuliani, just came out a few minutes ago and said that Hillary Clinton is, quote unquote, too stupid to be president because she didn't know about Monica Lewinsky. So I asked the question, was Donna Hanover, his second wife, too stupid to be president because she didn't know about Judith Nathan, his third wife, with whom he cheated on her? Who are these people to blame the wife for their husband's transgressions? The wife is the victim here. And to blame Hillary Clinton for Monica Lewinsky is a crime against all women, all of whom know full well that they don't deserve to be blamed for this.
That is a person on Twitter who was not on the stage last night.
I want to go to the sound really quick, though, because I think his response was interesting this morning on Fox and Friends.
I know that person. That person was a Miss Universe person, and she was the worst we ever had. The worst, the absolute worst. She was impossible. She was the winner, and you know, she gained a massive amount of weight, and it was a real problem. We had a real problem. Not only that, her attitude, and we had a real problem with her. So Hillary went back into the years, and she found this girl. This was many years ago, and found the girl and talked about her like she was Mother Teresa, and it wasn't quite that way, but that's okay.
Just to juxtapose, I mean, forget about for a second the texture of what he's saying, and I know you'll get into that in a minute. But
I don't need to.
You know,
I mean, I promise it's okay.
The first time we saw her today was on her plane, I believe, right? Hillary Clinton, and talking about different types of topics and kind of carrying on from where she left off last night. Now I'll give it to you.
I just don't think that this is a place that he should go. I don't think he was asked specifically this morning. I have to go back and check the transcript. I think he brought that up to clarify himself. And again, when you're trying to influence independent voters or people, especially women, and he's upside down on young women, that's not a place to be.
I make speeches at colleges all the time, and half the questions I get are about politics, half are about body image in the media, because I've been fat shamed a lot throughout my career. It's debatably what launched my career post my father's campaign. And I think actually I had a conversation with a friend of mine this morning, and it was a man. He said, I don't think this is that big of a deal. And I said, anytime a woman sees a man saying, you've gained a bunch of weight, she lost it, she looked unattractive, it affects all women everywhere. All women knows what it feels like to have a fat day. And I just don't understand when we're talking about ISIS with chemical weapons, why you're talking about a former Miss Universe gaining weight. It is so stupid.
Hey, guys can have fat days, too. I want that clear.
He's not talking about guys having fat days. That's the problem. He's not talking about guys. She's not Mother Teresa because she